say, would you like to, hopefully everybody just got that notice. Okay. I was going to say, would you like to start with yourself, and then I'll hit myself, and then we'll go around and see if I can capture everyone who's here. I'm seeing lots of familiar names.
Krista, Isabel, and Diane, I know, are here. I haven't checked everyone. So hello, everyone. I'm Becca Lewis, and I'm SDSU. I'm a professor in the biology department, and was fortunate enough to be working with Megan as part of the CWC team. We are represented here by some of our research team. It's a really big research team, so we'll be presenting on behalf of them. I also want to acknowledge our essential partners, part of the research team, the Climate Science Alliance. I know I saw Amber and I think Diane are with us today. And the other parts of the team that you'll be hearing about are really our stakeholders, the folks that we've been working with so closely throughout this project. So we're thrilled to be able to represent them and tell you more about the critical role they've played in the project.
Thank you. And I'm Megan Jennings. Becca and I have been leading this project together. I'm a research scientist at San Diego State University and have been working closely with our partners at the Climate Science Alliance since that organization began. And we just keep building new projects together. So you'll hear a little bit about that at the end. And that's what Liz was alluding to a moment ago. So I'd like to take the opportunity. Anybody who's on the research team, I see a bunch of you have turned your cameras on, so thank you. If you haven't yet, please do turn your camera on so I can make sure to get around to you. The first person I see on my screen is Diane Foote, our project manager. Would you like to introduce yourself, Diane?
Sure. Hi, I'm Diane Foote. I think I would describe myself as the cat herder and data wrangler for this project. Thanks.
And you're going to see some of the great work that Diane's been doing on this team a little bit later. We felt like one Diane wasn't enough, so we have more than one Diane. Diane Terry from the Climate Science Alliance. You want to introduce yourself, Diane?
Hi, everyone. I'm Diane Terry. I'm the co-director and creative lead of the Climate Science Alliance, and it's just been an honor and a privilege to work with the CWC team and also be the other Diane. So good to see you all.
Everything beautiful you see that we share today is courtesy of who we call Fancy Diane. So she makes everything look fancy. I also see our former postdoc, Isabel Rojas. Isa, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. Good to see you, everybody. I'm Isa Rojas. I was part of the biodiversity team. It was a pleasure to work with all the other research and also learn from Climate Science Alliance how to communicate our science better. And yeah, thanks. Great.
Isa is now back in Chile, has a new position as a professor at a university there. So excited for her. I see my partner in crime, Amber Paris from the Climate Science Alliance.
Good morning, everyone. Amber Paris. I'm the founder and lead advisor for the Climate Science Alliance, and I'm just really grateful for our longstanding partnership with Megan and San Diego State, and also with SGC. It's been a really great relationship, and as Megan alluded to, all of our projects really are these stepping stones that keep building on each other, and they're all projects that are really visioned by, led by, and being implemented by our community partners. And it's really our tribes that are leading this work, our tribal colleagues. And I would say probably 90% of our work now is tribally led. So it's just been a really beautiful, since the Alliance was created 7 years ago, it's grown really fast with over 400 partners, but it's because of those strong relationships, both with our community partners and with folks like you at SGC and throughout the jurisdictions. It's really a nice example of how when you work together, you can do so much more together than you can alone. So thanks for having us.
Thanks, Amber. I also see my collaborator, Erin Conlisk, who helped, we worked together on the project that led to the CWC project. Erin, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Erin Conlisk. I am a quantitative ecologist at Point Blue Conservation Science, and it is always a pleasure to work with Megan and Amber and the Dianes and Isabel and Rebecca. So thank you so much.
Great. We've also got Dustin Smith joining us, who went from undergraduate to graduate student while he's been part of the team. Dustin, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. So yeah, I'm Dustin. I was brought on to the CWC team to help with cartographic data. There's data from all kinds of different groups here, and I was brought on to kind of help manage that. I'm part of D cubed with the Dianes there.
Yes. And you'll see some of the D cubed handiwork, or D3. I don't know. We're workshopping it. You let us know what you think. Let's see. I do see some of our partners from the project. I'm going to shout out a few of you. Amber Bruno has participated. I think I saw, hold on, not everybody's showing up on my screen. Christina Schaefer, hi. Thank you for joining us. I saw Kim Clark from SCAG. Thank you. Morning. Melanie Schlotterbeck. I just want to give a great shout out to these folks for participating in our project, being part of our technical advisory group and helping us along. And finally, I think she is doing double duty. I'll give her a chance to introduce herself if she's here, but Krista West is one of our graduate students who's been working on the fire research team. I know she has another presentation she is trying to attend simultaneously. There she is. It's on fire. So are you there, Krista?
I'm here. Good morning, everyone. And yes, I'm Krista West. I'm an SDSU PhD student and a very proud member of CWC Team Fire.
Thanks for making this work this morning, Krista. And like Becca said, not all of our research team could be here today, but they've been actively involved in the project, and you'll see more of their work and see their names as we go through our presentation shortly. So should we just keep going, Trey?
Yeah, so you guys can take it away.
Okay, great. Let me get my screen share up here.
So Megan's going to be running the slides. We're going to be tag teaming the presentation this morning.
Do you see the right thing there?
We do.
Okay, excellent.
That looks great. Let's see. I can just give me 1 second. Sorry, I've got people everywhere and I can't actually see the slides. Okay. But we all, yeah, and again, just to thank everyone for coming with our research team and our stakeholders that were involved, everyone from SGC. We're really excited and proud of what CWC has been able to accomplish. And really just thrilled to be able to introduce to you sort of just big project sort of overview and the structure, which I'll do, and then turn it over to Megan, who'll be really showing you the incredible, I think, really legacy deliverables that CWC has created, and as both Amber and Megan were discussing, have really laid the groundwork to leverage some really exciting new projects based on CWC. So CWC, you've heard us use the acronym a couple times. It stands for, as you see on the slide, Connecting Wildlands Communities, Connecting Wildlands and Communities. And that's what we've been doing for the past 3.5 years. We've been doing that, focusing on climate adaptation, resilience, and readiness in Southern California.
Oops. There we go.
Okay, perfect. So what I want to make sure comes across is, as Megan said, we started CWC based on a pretty large body of work that Megan initiated. She mentioned that project with Aaron, as well as some of our other published work in the region that was focused on conservation planning from a landscape connectivity perspective across Southern California. That already was science in service because we're working directly with CDFW on that project. So what we recognized from that work and really carried forward into CWC was that truly successful and transformative conservation and climate adaptation needed to bridge boundaries, that we couldn't be doing this separately with sort of conservation on one side and thinking about built communities on another. We needed to extend beyond sort of research silos that typically isolate conservation or even elements within conservation and land use planning, and bridge that build a bridge between what's happening in natural conserved lands and what's happening in our built communities. All of that, as you'll see, is really something that we're focused on, particularly in a planning context. And I'll get to that in 1 second. So what the CWC project focused on, again, is connecting efforts in our region to safeguard the incredible species and natural systems that you see here that we have in Southern California, and connecting that with efforts to support climate adaptation and resilience in built communities. And again, what we're recognizing is that protecting natural lands and protecting built communities, there are multiple benefits. We're looking for opportunities to be able to advance climate adaptation and resilience in both of those settings. So what our project really aims to do is safeguard biodiverse natural systems in our region and pair that with efforts to support climate adaptation and resilience in built communities, taking a multi-benefits approach. So we all know that this is Southern California is a region that's home to around 25 million people. And we know that the conservation of natural lands, again, is tied both to the well-being as well as the safety of built communities. We know that many communities in Southern California are at the interface, the wildland urban or ex-urban interface, and that poses risks. Primarily when we're thinking about risks, we're thinking about risks of fire, but these are the same natural lands that our millions of residents really rely on for recreation, for exercise, and critical ecosystem services, things like carbon storage that are supporting our built communities. So CWC is really about connecting climate adaptation efforts in wildlands and communities. And again, what you see here is that we really wanted to focus on the planning landscape. We recognize that climate smart planning is really critical for the region. And so this was really a core element to the project, to work closely with jurisdictional planners that and make sure that our research, the work that we were doing on the science side, really could inform climate smart planning and identify opportunities to integrate the results and the deliverables from the science into local planning practice. And when we talk about the planning landscape, it's not like a single type of plan, as many of you are likely aware. So we've got all these different plans that we're looking to be able to support. I think in many ways, CWC really featured like that element that Liz was talking about, that key part of CCR projects that really focused on meaningful stakeholder engagement, because meaningful stakeholder engagement has really been at the heart of everything we've done on CWC. This graphic is a little bit out of date, so the numbers are probably maybe 20% lower than they would be, but we have a diverse stakeholder community. We have stakeholders from business and industry, community groups, academics, governments, federal, state, and local, and as Amber was talking about, tribes. So we've continued meaningful engagement really right out the gates. We've been holding in-person, when we could, in-person stakeholder meetings at the beginning of the project. We transitioned that to virtual town halls. We've been giving organized presentations, and also continuing to work. I'll talk a little bit more about our technical advisory groups that have been critical to our project. So as I mentioned, starting from day one, we worked really hard to solicit feedback, direction, and evaluation from a diverse range of stakeholders in person. As I mentioned, when we started the project, and in-person meetings were still a thing that people did. So we had a series of kickoff meetings with diverse stakeholder groups. We continued that engagement with virtual town halls. There's one little clip there if you want, Megan. And then more formal presentations like the one we gave at the 2021 Southwest Adaptation Forum. Another key aspect of our meaningful stakeholder engagement has been our ongoing technical advisory group meetings. This engagement has really been essential to solicit, again, feedback and direction from our stakeholders and ensure that our deliverables are actionable, directly meeting the needs of our diverse stakeholder groups. And as Liz mentioned, I know that's one of the key priorities of CCR projects. So guided by our stakeholder feedback and information, we established the structure of the CWC project, which is captured on this beautiful infographic. As Megan mentioned, all of the impactful graphics you see are made by our incredible and talented team members at the Climate Science Alliance, led by Diane Terry. So CWC is about connecting. It's about building connections among fields of research. It's about building connections between wildlands and built communities, and building connections across stakeholders and their communities of practice, connecting planners with land managers, with tribal governments and tribal leaders, and community and conservation organizations. So we focus specifically on building these connections in the areas of fire, which you can see here on the left, water, and biodiversity and conserved lands. And we have these two overarching goals that you can see on the bottom of identifying, again, that multiple benefits perspective and translating our work into a meaningful planning context as the critical lenses for our work. Yes, now you can go to the next slide, thank you. So just to, you know where Southern California is. So we focused the CWC on a footprint of Southern California, focusing specifically on, as I mentioned, those interfaces between built and natural communities. Our team worked to generate data for as broad a study area as possible, but we focused on particular watersheds. Those are the ones that you're seeing in darker blue here, really to make sure we were addressing that interface, wildland, urban, exurban interface zone where the built environment meets the wildlands. So our team, as I mentioned, followed this structure, and I'm going to briefly present to you what our teams were, who our team members were, just to flash their names on the screen. You've met some of them already, and a little bit of what they've been working on. So our fire team was really focused, shown here. Thank you, Krista and Aaron for representing. Was really focused on looking at characterizing fire, changing fire patterns, and both in terms of frequency, intensity, and extent, looking at vegetation responses to fire, specifically the distribution and expansion of non-native herbaceous species, and the effect of that herb expansion on biodiversity and fire patterns, looking at post-fire chaparral and drought vulnerability, as well as thinking from a built community perspective on the how those changing patterns of fire may be influencing home prices. So our fire products included really important deliverables like maps of drought vulnerability, as I mentioned, that change in herbaceous cover, improved fire extent maps, and data visualizations of post-fire recovery. And what's really essential, and that you'll see as Megan leads you through the data visualization portal and looking at some of the deliverables, all of these are really critical to necessary climate adaptation, implementation, and application. So thinking about fire preparedness planning or fire smart growth in built communities, as well as fire informed habitat management and restoration efforts. We had a wonderful water team who isn't with us today, but really worked hard to characterize different elements of water, specifically focused on water sustainability, focusing on flow, production and loading, things like flow volume, depth anomalies, water quality and water supply. And what is exciting about that is it really set the stage to be able to look at characterizing risk at the watershed scale that's really relevant both for wildlands and built communities. Just a sneak peek of the portal that you'll see more of just in a little bit, but our water deliverables include things like maps that capture flow and water quality, and again, have really important applications for climate smart planning, both for natural lands and built communities. So we're explicitly able to use these deliverables to look at watershed risk and resilience of water resources in conservation planning that are also able to support sustainable built communities. Our biodiversity and conserved land team, thank you, Isa, is part of that team. We were really fortunate, as Megan mentioned, to be able to build on the work that Megan, Erin, and other colleagues had completed in that previous partnership with CDFW focused on climate resilient connectivity. So that really served as an extraordinarily strong point of departure and foundation to be able to then look at what sort of important next steps. So we were able to take this product of thinking about how climate change may influence landscape connectivity that used cutting edge approaches and best practices in connectivity science, and use that as the, as I mentioned, sort of the foundation for our CWC work. For that, we were taking this foundation and taking it a next step further to focus on recreation. This was something that we heard really strongly from our stakeholder community, that we had to be able to, they needed information on how to balance recreation in this natural land supporting built communities multi-benefit perspective. So that's one thing that you'll be hearing about. We also wanted to think about carbon sequestration, thinking about both above and below carbon stocks. Again, this multi-benefit, how natural lands can be supporting built communities. And finally, to look at how we can think of refugia across the landscape. So these are areas that may be protecting both natural lands and built communities from climate change, and thinking about that from a multiple stressors perspective. So Megan will talk a little bit more about that.
Great, thanks, Becca. So as Becca just mentioned, those initial stakeholder feedback meetings that she showed some images from a moment ago, we really were hearing very strongly this was not something we had planned to be part of the project, but people were saying they needed help with planning for recreation, and in particular, planning more strategically and proactively to be able to better find a balance between protecting conservation targets and providing for community health, well-being, and even conservation buy-in by supporting recreation in a way that was compatible rather than conflicting with conservation targets. So, we've added some pieces to the project where we evaluated recreational impact. We mapped potential impact and conversely areas of refuge or refugia from recreation. That's what you see in the maps here on the screen in green. To support that strategic planning, we also work to identify areas where there are potential opportunities for recreational development. So those are in purple on the map on the right, where the impact to biodiversity and conservation targets could potentially be limited. So we could make that connection for people in a way that didn't conflict and was compatible. As Becca mentioned, similarly, carbon was something that we heard a lot from our partner feedback. Again, not something we originally planned to do, but people were really clamoring to get more information specifically about how we could quantify carbon storage in our chaparral systems. It's something that the state has been grappling with and has not been able to advance yet, I think, in light of other more pressing issues. And so we as a region came together and have been working to do this, to get better estimates of what carbon stocks are like in our most dominant vegetation type across the region. So to add this project or this aspect of the project on, we partnered with collaborators at UC Davis and the US Forest Service to really advance that research on quantifying carbon storage and sequestration in chaparral and better understanding the dynamics of that storage and sequestration, in particular in light of our fire-prone landscapes. What happens when it burns? How quickly does it recover? To better help establish some plans for how we can work together, again, merging the built environment and the natural, our natural landscapes to help with reducing atmospheric carbon concentrations. And then finally, as Becca mentioned, we had this aspect thinking about refugia from multiple perspectives, multiple domains, as we called them. We worked collaboratively as a team on this project, which I think made it one of the most exciting things that we've done together, to integrate data across these different focal topics that we keep mentioning: climate, wildfire, water, human activity, or recreation in this case. And the idea here was to develop a framework, a refugial framework, to combine our climate and non-climate stressors into an assessment of landscape level refugial capacity to better understand how we could prioritize protecting the things that have the greatest resilience to potential changes, again, both climate and non-climate changes. You know, Southern California is always changing. We have a lot of people here, so land use is actually one of our most pressing stressors. So how do we think about how that land use happens in light of these other stressors that we're facing? And I'll say, you know, while we demonstrated this approach through application to natural resources and conservation planning, we are currently adapting it to think about forest management and our high elevation forests across Southern California for another project, helping to identify strategic conservation actions and help support managers in making decisions about projects and activities they could do to enhance resilience. We have also envisioned how this exact same framework could be modified to apply to the built environment, as well as for applications in jurisdictional planning. Again, holding on to the things and protecting the things that are likely to remain unchanged as much as possible as we think about climate adaptation planning. And then finally, to sort of bring it back around full circle, we've also been working on integrating some of the data from that refugial analyses, the refugial analyses that you see on the screen here, overlaid with the connectivity work that started this whole thing. So in addition to thinking about how refugia and connecting refugia may be important to better plan for landscape connectivity and conservation, we also have looked at how fire, water, other changes to the landscape may affect the linkages that we've identified in that connectivity project. Again, I think while this has a focus in the conservation realm, I do think it benefits our natural communities to be thinking about these connections, you know, across our data products and in these realms of planning for conservation as well as communities. So last but not least, our work on planning integration is really where the rubber meets the road. We had a fantastic team led by Sherry Ryan, who's not able to be here today. So our planning team began by really assessing the current state of planning practice related to climate adaptation. You know, looking at jurisdictional plans, seeing where things were and where there was opportunity to work more closely with jurisdiction, who was at the cutting edge, who would be likely to adopt what we were planning to do and work with us on how to identify their needs. You know, the team worked to identify needs for research as well as opportunities to integrate that research into regional planning practice by local jurisdictions, but not just those local jurisdictions. As Becca said, we were trying to sort of break out of some of those silos. So working together with local jurisdictional planners, natural resource managers, and conservation planners, as well as our partners working on tribal community resilience and climate adaptation, sort of all together to help create those opportunities for building the research that meets the need, as well as integrating that into ongoing projects and plans. So one of the things that we were able to do is to use those interactions with jurisdictional planners as an opportunity to really elevate the concerns of our tribal partners about the disconnect in local and regional planning in terms of engaging with tribal communities on issues that affect their community and cultural resilience. So specifically in our early feedback sessions, we heard from our tribal partners that they wanted others in the adaptation planning realm to really be aware that all lands are ancestral homelands of Native people, and that there is a need to communicate and coordinate on issues beyond those that are required by law. So in other words, thinking beyond ground disturbing activities, beyond protection of cultural sites, because this protection of natural resources, that is culture and well-being and community for those tribal communities. In particular, I think about our partner at the Climate Science Alliance, Will Madrigal, who's a member of Kuya tribe, says the land is us and we are the land. So I think it's important to make that connection. We have also taken this amazing opportunity to learn from how our tribal partners are approaching climate adaptation in a way that's really inherently holistic and centered around those important connections between community and nature. So we were able to highlight that approach through development of a tribal case study that you'll see shortly, focused on the way that tribes are approaching climate adaptation. And so this great slide is something, again, developed by the Climate Science Alliance, again, to sort of help communicate what we were hearing from people about how they're interacting with tribes and take the opportunity to raise awareness about how we could interact more effectively and collaborate more effectively, again, breaking out of these silos in the way that we do this work. We created a planner survey, and that really helped us get a good grip on where people were in terms of what they wanted, what they were already working on. You can see at the top, which issues do you consider? People are already thinking about biodiversity and wildfire and water sustainability. But there were some planning needs that they helped us, they guided us in terms of the development of the research focal areas and our final products to best serve those needs. So, you can see at the top here, 73% of planners in our region were really interested in incorporating new tools and data in their planning practice. So we were focused on really addressing the issues on the bottom of the screen here that funding for those tools, data availability, and in particular ease of use were some of the barriers to actually having the information and data that those folks felt like they needed to help move forward with more aggressive or proactive or strategic climate adaptation planning. Okay, so I get to do the really fun part, which is to show what we've been working really hard on the last few months. This is the handiwork of D3 or D cubed. Again, as I said, we're still workshopping it, but Diane, and Dustin have put an amazing amount of work into this really amazing data portal that's been created. So this is an Esri-based, ArcGIS-based interactive data portal for our research projects. We heard from our planners that they wanted an Esri-based tool. So many of them are already using GIS. They wanted something that could easily fold into that practice. We investigated a lot of other tools, but this was what we heard was the most effective way to interact. And this will give people a way to explore the research products by focal topics. You can see at the top of the screen are those focal topics. If you want, you can capture this QR code. It'll be on the other slides as I move forward, but you can check it out. It's live. All right, so I'm just going to show you some examples of what we've got up there. So for example, this is the home for our climate data, and you can see there are links to our interactive maps. There is a video. In this case, it's practitioner perspectives, but we have a number of videos made by our research team to sort of explain what the research is about. They're little short 10-minute videos, so people can get a sense of what it is they're looking at and how to use the data. And then finally, we have some case studies for each focal topic that we present data for, to really help demonstrate how this type of data can be put into action. And we have a little bit more on that I'll share, but I first wanted to give you a look at what some of these maps look like. When we dig in further, you can really see how end users can explore the data online. But they can also download and integrate this information with other data hosted on ArcGIS Online. I think that's really the power of this platform, is it meets people where they are. If you're a GIS analyst, great, download it and go do your thing and combine it with a bunch of other data sources. If you're not, and you just need to be able to explore, in an interactive map, this gives people that option. Here we're showing some linked maps. These are all connected, that show the change in average precipitation in the recent past compared to future time periods under a drier climate scenario. So we've set these up to allow users to explore some different metrics of how we think about changes in the future, different time periods, and different emission scenarios or climate scenarios without having to feel overwhelmed by all the choices. We were very focused on really not aiming that fire hose at people's faces and helping them sort through this data in a helpful way. I just wanted to share another example, something a little more straightforward, because we didn't have all those scenarios, is the drought sensitivity that you heard us talk about a little earlier. This doesn't have those different time periods or climate scenarios, so you just have a single map. So, we have a mix of both of these. Wanted to give you a look at what some of those different options look like. So really excitingly, this hub also has a place for partners and stakeholders to explore the climate adaptation strategies that we co-produced with our technical advisory group. So that group that we mentioned earlier, we convene them multiple times, to give us input on what data do you need, exploring draft data to see how well it works, how can we present it in a way that's most useful. And then we had an entirely separate session, both with our jurisdictional and conservation planners, as well as with our tribal technical advisory group, to brainstorm what are the actions that you would take in response to the data we've been showing you and talking about these potential climate impacts and other associated impacts. What would you want to put in your plan? What are the strategies? And so that is really what you see here is a link to get into that. So again, we have one designed for jurisdictional planners. I'll show you some examples of that in a minute. And then another one focused on just our different focal areas for more broad-based planning, not specifically jurisdictional planning. And you can note that our different case studies are all linked here as well. So at the request of the technical advisory group, that the jurisdictional planning menu really allows planners to choose a planning area of interest. So at the top here, you'll see, there's, if you're thinking about codes or ordinances or a general plan or a hazard plan, for example, you can click on that and then you can drill down. So I've clicked on general plan in this example, and then you have the different elements of a general plan, and you can click on that. And then some of those adaptation actions or strategies that best fit those planning needs show up on the screen, again, organized by focal topic. So by pairing this type of tool with the data, really hope that this facilitates integration of the research into planning practice. That focal topic menu is organized similarly, but it's just a little more straightforward because we don't have it connected to specific plan types. So to begin to wrap up, I really just wanted to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about how we wanted to connect, and I think we have really done a great job of this, with others outside the different planning communities that we were working with the most. So we've been doing that through the meaningful engagement strategies pioneered by the Climate Science Alliance. We had the opportunity to model our approaches to partnership, collaboration, and co-production at last spring's Southwest Adaptation Forum, or SWAF. We created researcher team videos, we had panel discussions, and just really great interactions with adaptation specialists across the Southwest. Again, thinking about transferability. While we were focused on Southern California, I think this type of co-production and engagement and focus on connecting what we do in natural systems with what we do in our built environments and in our communities is something that reaches everyone. And so we really wanted to reach well beyond Southern California with what we've learned and what we've built to hopefully help others continue this good work in other places and build on and expand in more great ways that I'm sure we haven't even seen yet. And specifically, the Alliance's Art and Community Initiative really allowed us the great opportunity to work with some fantastic artists who help communicate our research and practitioner stories in different ways to reach different audiences. So specifically, we created an amazing project overview video for that Southwest Adaptation Forum with Alliance artist Andrew Pittman at Condor Visual Media. You can find that on our project website at the Climate Science Alliance webpage. We'll have a link at the end if you want to check it out. Really just beautiful and excellent storytelling. We had the opportunity to feature the graphic design and artwork of Fancy Diane, who we've been talking about at San Diego Design Week. She really, gave this project a face, a connection, and made everything just so much more beautiful. And I think it really connects with people when you see something that's so visually engaging. And then I think the most exciting part has been to work with these artists. So I'm going to just take a moment to acknowledge their fantastic work. So for these art collaborations, we were really fortunate. I've worked previously with Audrey Carver, and this was a great opportunity to work with her again. And she was working in a slightly different medium this time. And she created a story map, an ArcGIS story map that featured some watercolor interpretations that she made of our data maps, and then paired those with research and practitioner stories that really, I think, brought the project alive and gave it the connection to people and places that it serves in a way that I think sort of represents how important all those connections were for all of us. And excitingly, this was selected as one of Esri's favorite stories of 2021. And they featured her story map here. We can provide a link. It's also on our webpage. we had an art fellow join us, Kim Reeser, who's an amazing oil-based artist. And she created a whole series that really took some of the focal areas of our research, and she created some different pieces. What you see here is one that was inspired by our refugia work, and you can really see, some information about temperature change and some different environments affected by different things. And this is actually a 3D. This is a cabinet. And inside this little cubby in the center is our refuge. It's so amazing to see in person. She has some other pieces inspired by our work on connectivity and fragmentation, as well as fire. I encourage you to check out her pieces. They're really fantastic. They've been exhibited virtually. And finally, she had the opportunity to exhibit them in person at several art shows recently, and we hope to have more. If you have something where you're looking for climate-inspired art, please let us know. We'd love to have Kim's work shared more broadly. And this was just such a great, she worked with everyone on our team. So again, this was like a true collaboration and connection that was really fantastic. So finally, I want to wrap up, and I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge, we've been hinting at this all along, all that has grown out of this project. In addition to growing our network of partners and building our individual and collective research portfolios, this project has really inspired and enhanced new projects and collaborations. So on the left-hand side, you'll see our resilient restoration. That was the project that we talked about in the beginning that was received round 3 funding from the CCRP. This is, to serve, led by our tribal partners, and we're working in collaboration with UC Riverside, and the Climate Science Alliance is leading this as well, their tribal working group, really focused on tribal cultural resilience and how do we connect the ways that native species and natural resources are so important, both ecologically, but culturally and for community. So how can we understand the potential changes and enhance resilience to climate change through restoration activities that connect Western science and Indigenous stewardship and tribal and Indigenous knowledge. We've also been working, this has led into the montane forest conservation strategy. We've been working on the Climate Science Alliance, and SDSU has worked on with the US Forest Service and the Southwest Climate Adaptation Science Center. We've leveraged our refugia framework. And as I mentioned earlier, we're using that to help design the conservation strategy, acknowledging areas of refugia and helping to protect them, and then thinking about the flip side of that exposure. And then finally, in the last year or so, we had the opportunity to think bigger about how we continue on with this community-led, community-inspired, community-visioned work. SDSU recently had a call for big ideas. This is an initiative that several universities across the US have taken on. And it's really to think bigger about how we work together and create more transdisciplinary work and connect across our campuses, but also connect with the community. And so Becca and I, along with another one of our CWC partners, Doug Stowe, and some folks outside of the team, created the Community Climate Action Network. And again, it's all connected to this type of community-led and community-inspired work that we've been doing here. We're just kicking off that big idea. We were selected as a finalist, and we're figuring out exactly what that means. But I think what it means is we keep doing more of this. We've already had ideas to advance drought planning and decision-making, and to work on fire planning for tribal partners. How can they better understand the potential changes that fire is bringing that may not be in their Indigenous history or oral history, to think about how to integrate, again, Western science about what changes are happening with their Indigenous stewardship and Indigenous knowledge about caring for the land, to think about using fire for restoration, fire preparedness planning, and other great things like that. So with that, I will just end by saying thank you so much for this opportunity to bring this research to life, to bring these partnerships together and to work together for good. It's been so rewarding and fulfilling, and I'm sure everyone on the team would say this. We've loved doing this, and I frequently talk about how amazing it has been to work with a granting organization that has so focused on this meaningful engagement, because this would not have been the project that it is without that important engagement and connection and drive from our communities that have participated in this. So thank you also to those folks who have been such an important part of making this research what it is.
Please join